Number 1. Disney Cruise Line, the most unexpected decline. At number 1, Disney Cruise Line. And this is where the list becomes uncomfortable. Disney's satisfaction scores dropped by nearly 23%. That doesn't mean Disney is suddenly bad. It means expectations are colliding with reality. What it is: Disney Cruise Line is facing a value problem. The experience on board is still polished. Service remains friendly. Ships are clean and well-maintained, but the price has climbed faster than perceived value, especially for repeat cruisers. Families who once saw Disney as a once-in-a-lifetime splurge now see it as a recurring financial strain. Why it exists. Disney operates under a premium promise. Guests don't just pay for a cruise, they pay for trust, consistency, effortless magic. But capacity has increased. More ships, more guests, and while the product is still strong, small cracks are showing. Longer waits for character experiences, more structured scheduling, less spontaneity. The consequence, if ignored. Guests don't feel disappointed in isolation, they feel disappointed relative to what they paid. That's dangerous. When a brand charges top-tier prices, even minor inconveniences feel amplified. Reviews increasingly mention that while the cruise was nice, it didn't feel worth it anymore. Former crew members say this shift is subtle but real. The magic hasn't disappeared, it's just harder to access than it used to be. The smart cruiser alternative. Disney still delivers for first-time families and die-hard fans, but experienced cruisers are becoming selective. Shorter sailings, off-peak dates, or exploring premium lines that focus less on branding and more on adult-oriented calm. Number 2. Norwegian Cruise Line. Freedom with fine print. At number 2, Norwegian Cruise Line. This one surprises many loyal fans. Norwegian's ratings have dropped by over 21%, and the complaints follow a clear pattern. What it is. Norwegian still markets itself around freestyle cruising, no fixed dining times, no rigid schedules, more flexibility. But passengers increasingly report that freedom now comes with hidden friction. Dining availability is one of the most common issues. Guests describe difficulty securing reservations, especially for specialty restaurants that now feel essential rather than optional. The freedom exists in theory, but in practice, it requires planning and extra spending. Why it exists. Norwegian has leaned heavily into upselling. Beverage packages, dining packages, entertainment upgrades. The base fare no longer reflects the full experience. At the same time, ships are sailing full, very full. Freestyle cruising works best when there's space to absorb demand. When ships are packed, flexibility turns into competition. The consequence, if ignored. Guests report feeling stressed instead of relaxed. Long waits, sold-out venues, confusion around what's included and what's not. Food quality complaints are also rising, not because meals are terrible, but because expectations are higher than what's delivered. When guests pay extra, they expect consistency. In many cases, they aren't getting it. Former crew members quietly point out that Norwegian's model only works when guest numbers stay below certain thresholds. Those thresholds are now routinely exceeded. The smart cruiser alternative. Norwegian still appeals to travelers who like choice and variety, but smart cruisers now plan aggressively. Dining reservations early, packages evaluated carefully, expectations adjusted. Many experienced travelers are comparing Norwegian against newer premium options that offer fewer choices but smoother execution. Number 3. Carnival Cruise Line. Fun at a cost. At number 3, Carnival Cruise Line. This is not a collapse, it's a warning. Carnival's satisfaction scores have dropped by nearly 20%. That matters because Carnival's entire brand is built on repeat cruisers who know exactly what they're signing up for. What it is. Carnival is facing the consequences of its own success. It remains one of the most affordable ways to cruise, and that keeps ships full, very full. Guests still describe Carnival as lively, social, and energetic. That hasn't changed. What has changed is how manageable that energy feels once you're on board. Crowding is now the dominant theme across reviews. Pool decks feel packed early in the day, buffet lines stretch longer than expected. Elevators become bottlenecks during peak hours. Why it exists. Carnival operates on volume. Lower fares mean higher demand. To maintain margins, ships sail at extremely high occupancy, often above traditional comfort levels. At the same time, staffing pressures haven't fully normalized. Crew members are still working hard, but there are fewer of them per guest than in the past. That gap is noticeable during busy moments. The consequence if ignored. Service inconsistency is the biggest risk. Some guests report excellent experiences, while others describe frustration, long waits, and missed expectations. Food quality is another growing concern. Carnival once had a reputation for surprising guests with value-driven dining. Now, reviews frequently mention repetitive menus and uneven execution. When expectations are already modest, falling short feels worse. This is where many cruisers get caught off guard. They remember how Carnival used to feel and assume it hasn't changed. But the onboard reality is louder, busier, and more compressed than before. The smart cruiser alternative. Carnival still works best for short sailings and travelers who enjoy a party-focused atmosphere. Experienced cruisers quietly suggest avoiding peak seasons and choosing newer ships where layouts handle crowds slightly better. If relaxation is your priority, Carnival requires careful planning, not blind loyalty. Number 4. Royal Caribbean. When the king starts to crack. Number 4 is the first real shock on this list. Royal Caribbean. For years, Royal has been considered nearly untouchable. Innovative ships, massive entertainment options, industry-leading attractions. But in 2026, the data shows a clear warning sign. Ratings have fallen by over 16%. What it is. Royal Caribbean is dealing with a growing split between promise and reality. On paper, the product still looks unbeatable. Broadway-style shows, aqua theaters, ice skating, flow riders, zip lines. The hardware is impressive, but guests are increasingly focused on what it feels like to experience all of that, surrounded by too many people. Why it exists. Royal's business model depends on scale. Bigger ships mean more features and more revenue, but they also mean more passengers, and ships today are sailing fuller than ever before. Data shows many sailings are operating at around 110% of double occupancy. That means every pull-out sofa is used, every upper bunk is down. Public spaces designed for fewer guests are under constant strain. At the same time, older ships are being left behind. Reviews describe them as shabby, worn, and past their prime. Loyal cruisers feel the company's attention is focused almost entirely on launching new megaships, while the rest of the fleet quietly deteriorates. The consequence, if ignored. Crowding is now the dominant complaint. Guests mention long lines, difficulty finding seating, and overwhelmed crew members. Even when the entertainment is excellent, the effort required to enjoy it is increasing. Dining complaints are also rising, not necessarily because the food is terrible, but because it feels mass-produced and repetitive. Shrinkflation is a frequent accusation. Smaller portions, less variety, desserts that look impressive but feel engineered to cut costs. Nickel and diming completes the picture. Extra charges for items guests believe used to be included. Constant upselling for drinks, dining packages, and Wi-Fi.
Even if the actual offerings haven't changed drastically, perception matters, and the perception is that guests are paying more for less. The smart cruiser alternative. Royal Caribbean still delivers spectacle. For first-time cruisers or families focused on activities, it can still be a strong option. But experienced cruisers are adapting. They're choosing sailings carefully, avoiding peak seasons, or quietly migrating to brands that offer modern design without the extreme crowd density. And that trend accelerates with the next lines on this list.
Number 5. MSC Cruises. Stunning ships, chaotic reality. At number 5, MSC Cruises. This is where the numbers begin to hide a deeper problem. MSC's ratings dropped by about 14%, but the real issue is where they started. Their average scores were already among the lowest in the industry. So this isn't a fall from grace, it's a slide from an already unstable position. What it is. MSC is the most divisive cruise line sailing today. There's almost universal agreement on one thing: the ships are beautiful. World Europa, Seashore, and similar vessels receive constant praise for design, architecture, and visual impact. The problems begin once passengers try to live on them. Reviews consistently describe operational chaos, long lines, confusing processes, disorganization at embarkation, dining, and guest services. The ships look premium, but they don't run like it. Why it exists. The core issue is density. MSC aggressively markets to families, often using promotions that allow kids to sail free. That sounds appealing, but it dramatically increases passenger counts. These ships aren't just sailing full, they're sailing beyond what their layouts comfortably support. Third and fourth bunks are filled, public spaces are stretched, dining rooms are overloaded. The design simply can't keep up with the volume. The consequence, if ignored. Dining is one of the most common pain points. Reviews repeatedly use the same words: inconsistent, lukewarm, downgraded. Guests don't necessarily expect luxury at MSC's price point, but they do expect reliability. That reliability is missing too often. Customer service adds another layer of frustration. Many passengers describe interactions as abrupt or unhelpful. This is especially noticeable on U.S. sailings, where guests expect a more attentive service style. The cultural mismatch becomes very visible under pressure. This is where many cruisers get caught off guard. The ship looks spectacular in photos. The fare looks unbeatable, but once on board, the experience feels stressful instead of relaxing. There is one exception, and it's mentioned in almost every analysis: the yacht club. This private enclave consistently receives strong reviews, but it also costs significantly more, which means the best MSC experience is locked behind an upgrade. The smart cruiser alternative. If you're considering MSC for the value, be honest about what you want. If crowds, lines, and inconsistency frustrate you, this may not be the right fit unless you're booking the yacht club. Many experienced cruisers quietly advise using MSC selectively, shorter itineraries, newer ships, or looking elsewhere entirely if operational smoothness matters to you.
Number 6. Princess Cruises, a brand losing its identity. Most passengers don't realize that Princess Cruises isn't collapsing, it's drifting. And for long-time cruisers, that distinction matters. Princess lands at number 6 because the decline is smaller than the others, roughly 10%. On paper, that doesn't look dramatic, but context is everything. These are the lowest satisfaction scores Princess has seen in years, and the complaints are unusually consistent. So what's happening? What it is. Princess is suffering from a clear identity crisis. Loyal guests no longer feel certain what kind of cruise they're booking. The line is split between two very different experiences that don't blend well. On one side, there are the older ships. Reviews describe them as dated, tired, and overdue for major refits.
Longtime cruisers are openly asking why these ships are still sailing in their current condition. They feel like they belong to a different era. On the other side are the new mega ships like Sun Princess and Star Princess. These are marketed as the future of the brand, bigger, flashier, more modern. But many traditional Princess fans don't see them as an upgrade. They see them as too large, too busy, and too far removed from the quieter, refined experience Princess was known for. Even the decor is mentioned repeatedly. Guests say it no longer feels Princess enough. That might sound vague, but to loyal cruisers, it's a real loss of identity. Why it exists. This shift is driven by pressure to compete. The industry is chasing younger couples and families, and that usually means bigger ships, more venues, and higher passenger counts. Princess is trying to modernize without fully letting go of its premium roots. That balancing act is failing. Bigger ships mean more guests mean thinner service ratios, and thinner service ratios change the onboard experience even when the crew is still trying their best. The consequence if ignored. Passengers aren't angry, they're disappointed, and disappointment is far more dangerous to a brand. Food complaints are rising steadily. Menus are described as repetitive. Meals are called bland or inconsistent. Even when improvements exist in certain venues, they aren't reaching everyone on board. The experience depends too much on luck. Service follows the same pattern. Crew members are still praised for being friendly, but many guests say they simply look overwhelmed. This is where many cruisers get caught off guard. Good service requires time, not just good intentions. Even the technology, once a selling point, is no longer reliable enough to save the experience. The medallion system and app are frequently described as glitchy. It works until it doesn't, and when it fails, it adds frustration instead of convenience. The smart cruiser alternative. Princess still works for the right traveler. If you value a quieter atmosphere and choose ships carefully, especially after recent refurbishments, you may still enjoy the experience. But former crew members quietly advise this: don't assume the brand guarantees the same experience across the fleet. Research the specific ship, read recent reviews, and if you want consistency, you may need to look beyond Princess for now. Later on, we'll talk about where many former Princess loyalists are going instead.